everyone, and welcome to the program Business Points on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi. Many thanks for joining on today's edition of the program. Today we'll be looking at monetary policy rates, and we'll be looking at the implications of the new monetary policy, the new interest rates on Nigerians and Nigerian businesses. That's what we're going to be focusing more on today. It has been said by the central bank governor that the main reason why all of this rates are being increased, as an MPR rate is being increased, is because of the fact that it's going to help curb out inflation. Nigerians have asked if that is the major source that will be able to curb it out. Then, looking at those angles now, the environment, the economic environment of Nigeria is currently not friendly for things like that to be happening, for the interest rate to keep increasing on a monthly basis, as well as also the tax reforms bill that have been sent to the State House by the president. People have argued that this is not the right time for all of this to be happening because it's not even going to help solve the problem, that there are other issues, that are supposed to be, solved, but not monetary policies and then interest rate being hiking almost on a monthly basis. The MPR committee met 6 times this year, had 6 different occasions. They had meetings 6 times in the total this year, and again, each of the time that they meet, they tend to increase the monetary rate from what it was before to a different increment in the rate. So looking at this now, it was at 27.25%. Now it has been increased by 0.25%, which is currently the current interest rate now is at 27.50%, which is alarming for Nigerians because one is going to affect purchasing power. And again, we have the dollarized economy. Nigerians tend to spend so much of cash. Now, if you take a loan from a bank or a loan app, there's a high tendency that because of this current increment in rate, you'll be paying more than what you were supposed to pay. And if your money is in the bank, now Nigerians are asking how then can Nigerians save? Looking at the festive period, and how Nigerians tend to spend more of cash during this period is another concern. And again, the new minimum wage, which Nigerians have argued is not equivalent with the current economic realities of Nigerians. So a whole lot is going on, and we're going to x-ray how, if this is actually going to help curb out inflation, as said by the CBN governor, Mr. Yemi Kaduso, and how it's affecting and the implications of this new MPR rate on Nigerian businesses and on individuals, because there is no way you can take out one from the other because it's all in a circle and there's a trajectory. They are all interconnected. So we want to x-ray these angles of conversation today. I have a guest who will be joining me virtually, but we'll be going on a quick break. When we return back, I will introduce my guests as we tend to x-ray these major talking points on today's edition of Business Points. You sit back, relax, we'll be right back. A million thanks for staying with us, and we're about to extend the conversation. Now I have my guest who is joining us virtually from the Federal Capital Territory here in Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Johnson Olubero. Thank you for joining us on today's edition of Business Point. Yes,
Thank you for having me. I'm not sure you can hear me.
let's get into it. Looking at the current economic realities we're facing now, what's your reaction first to the MPR rate being increased from 27.25% to now currently 27.50%? What's your reaction to that as a tax and a financial expert that you are?
I hope that my audio is good enough. Okay, so in terms of reaction, I would say no surprises. As a matter of fact, some of us had anticipated that it will be increased by at least 50 basis points from what it was before, for obvious reasons, because as you know, we are entering into the yellow tide season. So usually there is this fear that there will be a lot of money in circulation, and it is expected, of course, that usually around December and festive seasons like this, inflation may even rise. And I believe that that is why the Monetary Policy Committee, in their wisdom, are there to sustain the hike. Although what they have done this time is just a marginal increase, like you said, just 25 basis points.
But looking at it now, and from those angles, Nigerians tend to spend a lot of
What
time
we've
from
had
this
in previous
this
time
era,
to
the festivities. But
retain, we all know what food inflation at some point.
can go ahead. Well,
I,
looking,
I am really struggling to hear you. I don't know whether you can hear me.
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly. I think we'll need to go on a quick
So
break
I didn't get your question. That's the
before the call
problem.
continues. Yes, many thanks for staying with us. Now we're about to, extract all of these major talking points, and everything has been resolved. A bit of network issues, but I promise you that has been sorted out. So, Mr. Johnson, let's get back to it. You were making mention about the fact that this did not come as a surprise to you, and you said you looked forward, you were expecting, most of you in the financial sector look forward to these increments. Why is that?
Okay, thank you and apologies. I mean, this is Nigeria at the end of the day. Okay, so I was saying that it is usually anticipated that during yearly tax season, like we are already gradually entering into, there's a lot of money in circulation, right? And you know that when you have a lot of money and it's not backed up by corresponding economic activities, definitely what will happen is you're going to have inflation. And you know that they have been doing the CBN, or let me say the Monetary Policy Committee, they've been doing everything within their power in the past month to combat the persistent inflation. So that was why it was important for them to still retain it. But we must note, however, that even though there has been a hike in what it used to be, this is about the least in terms of the percentage hike that we have had in the past few months. So some people, including myself, we've anticipated maybe an increase of about 50% basis point. But all they have done this time was to do only 25% basis point. And the reason for that, of course, was because if you remember the GDP figures, came just the day before that meeting. I guess they looked at some other metrics and they felt it might be safe to just only apply a marginal increase, because as you know the MPR thing is always a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's helping us to control inflation and stabilize the economy, and on the other hand, it could also slow down economic growth, and increase the cost of borrowing. So the CBN, they have to kind of achieve a balance. While they cannot leave it open such that inflation will go over the roof, they also, I guess, were mindful to ensure that, while we are trying to combat inflation, we also should not stifle economic growth completely.
Now, obviously, this means business individuals will need to pay more when they take loans, and those that have taken, there might be high chance that they would, pay more. Now, let's look at for those saving in the bank. Is there any benefit that they can get from this current increment of the MPR rate? That means if you save more, would your interest rate be higher than what it was, or is still going to be the same as the status quo?
Well, depending on the contract, if it's a fixed deposit, for instance, where the rates were already predetermined, at the beginning, for those ones, they are bound by the contract. But for most other kind of investment, particularly those within the stock market and those who have other kind of lending arrangement. So of course you're right. They will be smiling to the bank now, because the rate is going to also increase. So usually when MPR go up like this, and that's basically explains exactly what the CBN is trying to do, is to encourage investment, and discourage spending, unless when it is really necessary. So the whole idea is that the CBN is saying, this season we want you to come and invest your money and only do essential expenses, only when it is essential. So you are right. People who are investors will and should be smiling to the bank.
And you also mentioned about the fact that what we having so much cash in circulation is going to lead to inflation. But some other analysts have actually argued that more production is what's going to help curb out inflation. So with cash being regulated and not being moving circulated as it was where, do you think it's actually going to help curb out inflation at a faster pace than Nigerians are expecting it to curb out?
Yeah, of course. So what I have done was to kind of try to explain the thinking or what I think is the reasoning behind the CBN's decision, being the apex monetary authority in the country. I'm not necessarily saying that I agree 100% with that decision, because the truth of the matter is, and I said it earlier, is always a two-edged sword. The truth of the matter is that Nigeria is faced with a reality. We have a plethora of issues, staring at us in the face, and there is no easy way out. And like I also said earlier, it's a two-edged sword. So it could help us to achieve and curtail some, hike in inflationary rate. However, I also agree that when there is no money in circulation, you are also going to slow down the economic activities. And when the economic activity has slowed down, in the long run, the little gain you are having by trying to curtail inflation may be swallowed up by the fact that even the little that is not being spent, when there is no enough economic activity commensurate with the level of that expenditure. And I guess that is why we've not really made so much gain with our attempt to curtail inflation. That's why, despite the persistent increase in the MPR rate, you will discover that we've not really seen the kind of reduction that we would have loved to see. Yeah, it has achieved some kind of reduction. I think cumulatively, since this current administration came in, I think cumulatively we've been able to achieve maybe close to 8% or so. The last time I checked, some months inflation went up, some months it came down, some months it went up, some it came down. So cumulatively, if you do all the pluses and minuses, you will realize that we've been able to save maybe close to about 8% in terms of we've been able to achieve close to 8% reduction, I beg your pardon, in inflation. So the policy is kind of paying off, but we are not sure, we are not convinced that this is the best that we could get, because there has to be that balance between driving economic growth, driving economic activities, encouraging activities in the marketplace, and also trying to balance the situation or the scenario where you have excessive circulation of money in the economy.
We have a dollarized economy, and again, the floating of Nigerian naira has also contributed, according to some business analysts and financial analysts, that the floating of Nigerian naira has also contributed to the massive drive that we're seeing leading to inflation. With all of this being said now, how can Nigeria, face the real issues and, sort out this current inflation rate? Though the projection for the coming years have shown that Nigerian inflation is going to, dip in and is going to get better. But with the policies, you and other financial analysts have actually said that the policies are looking good on paper. But with the implementation, how soon, or do you think these would be able to help with the naira being floated?
So maybe this is a good point to quote the man in the middle of the storm himself, that our CBN governor. During the short remark that he made, he also told Nigerians that Nigerians should be prepared. There is usually that time lag between when policies are implemented and when you begin to feel the impact of that policy. So it may take a while. Some said maybe between 6 to 12 months, and that's why a lot of people are saying, even the president has told us recently that we should just keep continuing to endure, because he believes that in the coming days things will eventually get better. But if Nigerians are impatient, you can't blame them. We've been hearing, be patient, be patient, be patient. I guess in all my adult years, if you look at the cost of things now, you take basic food items, vegetable oil, rice, grains, millet. You look at in the last 12 years how much these things were being sold at the market, vis-a-vis how much they are being sold now. We discovered that I was doing a small research earlier in the day. In some instances, the costs have gone up by more than 150%. In some instances, 130%. Rice went up as high as 120,000 sometimes, in the course of the year. I think it's back to about 110, 105 now. You want to look at even egg, which is like the normal poor person's food, egg that used to sell for maybe 2,000 naira or so, or 2,500, depending on the size, maybe 3,000 worst case scenario. This time last year, the same quantity of egg today is selling for 6,500 or 6,000, depending on where you buy from. So we can only hope that we will see the changes. And you made a very good point with the dollarization of our economy. It's not just that our economy is dollarized. The problem even is that the dollar is not in the bank. The bulk of the dollar is even outside of the banking system. And so that is why no matter the amount of policy that government put in place, we have not seen the kind of corresponding changes that we would have loved to see, in terms of the exchange rate. And that's basically because when the dollar is not in the economy, any policy change that you are trying to implement, the guy will go and hold his dollar. We had a politician, who granted an interview recently, who was telling us what happened in the course of the last primaries of his party, how that some of his candidates who were fellow contestants, pay as high as $30,000 per delegate. And he also went to say that he knows people that if you want them to bring hundreds of thousands of dollars, they will give it to you cash. Most of these funds are outside of the banking system. So that's why there's still a lot of manipulation. So in fact, what has happened is that most of the policies that the CBN, the Monetary Authority, has tried to put in place, we have seen the exact opposite in terms of impact, because there is a cabal of people, that have this dollar at their disposal, who have, sworn to just take advantage of the situation. So when the policy is not favorable, they will withdraw their money from circulation, and then they will introduce some sort of artificial scarcity, and then they will go and sell it in the black markets. And it's still going to be very hard for you to. I know there's a whole lot of effort that the CBN has put in place to curtail the activities of the black marketers, but I mean, they can only try as much as they can. And some of the people in question are also big people that have police and mobile police, in some instances even soldiers, guarding them. So that makes it really, really difficult to even enforce even some of the policies that the Monetary Authority is trying to implement. So you see, we have an interesting situation to deal with here.
Situation to deal with, but I would love us to explain more on this subject matter, but time is actually not being our friend at this time. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the program. But with the current administration, I'm sure the president on the monetary policy and also tax reforms are doing everything possible to curb out and then make sure we have all resources back into our banks, and for the cost of items in the market, hopefully in months, as forecast and projected, hopefully things will get back to normal, as Mr. President has promised us earlier before now. Like he said in his words, that that everything Nigerians are going through is going to be like that of a childbirth, and when we see the light of day, hopefully all Nigerians will walk into the bank smiling and go to the market as well, smiling with a reasonable budget, and for one to be able to achieve all that he wants. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition, Mr. Johnson Olugbenro, for all of your input.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and that's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of Business Points. My name is Samuel Odi. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.